The only thing that would be absolutely non-negotiable is that candidates' drive to be in that particular industry and that candidates' willingness to be a part of that company. So if I'm taking an interview and I don't get that feeling that you want it badly enough, then no matter how good your competency might be, I might pass you over for some other candidate.
The interview usually starts with something about yourself or a briefing. So that is the point where I think you should target and give direction to your interview that this is where I want to focus to. So I think giving a direction or having a proper narrative to your HR answer definitely helps.
If you are at the front end, what I feel is your smooth communication matters a lot, and your leadership and ownership skills also matters a lot. And there I would actually like to point out your street smartness actually matters the most.
Welcome everyone to the third episode of Fincast. It is our pleasure to introduce Akshay. He is a distinguished professional currently working in Nomura Investment Banking. Akshay is an alumnus of IIM Kozhikode, where he completed his MBA and interned at Goldman Sachs during his summer internship. He holds a Bcom degree from the esteemed St. Xavier's College, Calcutta, and has achieved significant milestones in his professional life. Having completed 2 levels of CFA and the first part of FRM, with over 2 years of experience as a market analyst in Futures First, Akshay has demonstrated expertise in trading. He's got diverse backgrounds and extensive knowledge, which makes him a valuable resource in the field of investment banking and financial markets.
Along with Akshay, we are also delighted to introduce Aditya, who is currently working at Bank of America as an investment banking analyst. Aditya completed his MBA as a part of the PGP Finance batch from IIM Kozhikode in 2023, and he interned with Flipkart during his summers. Prior to joining IIM Kozhikode, Aditya earned his BTech from IIT Delhi in 2019 and went on to work with Tata Capital as a manager in the IT department. His strong technical background and comprehensive finance education equip him with a unique perspective in the field of investment banking.
And we're also pleased to introduce Pratik with us. He's currently working as a buy-side analyst in Piramal Alternatives. Pratik is a chartered accountant by profession and is an alumnus of IIM Kozhikode, where he completed his post-graduation. He interned with JP Morgan during his summers. Prior to joining IIM Kozhikode, Pratik completed his Bcom from HR College, Bombay, and went on to work for a little over 4.5 years with KPMG. He has a keen interest in finance, stock markets, and startups. He brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise in his current role. It's an honor to welcome all the three of you all to the third episode of Fincast.
Thank you so much.
Let's start with the first question. So all three of you are working in core finance roles. So my question is that was finance always the plan or it happened by chance? And in case if it was a planned decision, how did you develop this love for finance and how did you develop this passion for finance basically?
Right. So I think for me, this journey has been relatively less. It had been more straightforward for me because since day one, like I knew that finance was something that it's an industry that I would want to work in, and I think this passion actually started, I would say, from my household itself because my father was also an active trader some time back. So that is how I got involved with markets, and since a very long time I've been tracking it, following it. My investment journey started post, I think, 2015 or something like that. And my love for, learning more about it led me to pursue CFA and then later FRM, though FRM was not so much in conjunction to the markets. But yeah, I've always, tried to look for opportunities in the field of finance itself. Like from various internships that I have done, and even my first job post my undergrad was in the field of finance. So from that perspective, I think I was very sorted. But the love for finance, I think the best way to do it is, I think, because that is something which data regarding that is very easily available, and it does not take a lot of time to just get up in the morning and just at 9:15 when the market opens, just to scroll through any of the apps. Like Money Control is a very good source to see what's happening and what has been the development. So I think those are some of the ways in which you can develop a liking for finance, other than obviously the academic paths that are. I think I'll let Aditya add something to it.
Yeah, so in my case, I would say it was kind of a mix of both. Planned in that sense that during my undergrad, I had an opportunity to take many management electives. Although I was on the tech side, we had an opportunity there to take electives from economics, finance, ops, HR. So I explored a lot during my undergrad, and somewhere I found a small interest in finance. And I would say unplanned in that sense that there are series of dynamic events which happened, and eventually I landed up in finance. So post my undergrad, I took job at an NBFC. So I was party to a lot of discussion during multiple projects, wherein they used to discuss products like loan against share, loan against property, and that there I found a knack of like how this financial logic they fascinate me, and I was always strong on the analytical side, and then this understanding of finance it fascinated me a lot. Obviously, like Akshay said, I used to read Economic Times while reaching to office. Then to explore the interest, read few books, generic books over finance, and yeah. So right now, being in a storytelling business, that's my story of how I landed in finance. Over
So
to
for
you.
me,
Yeah.
for me, for finance came naturally because I come from a family where we have a lot of chartered accountants in our family, and for me, it was a very obvious decision to do CA. And then, so apart from that, CA, becoming a CA, stock markets have always excited me from like, say, from 10th standard. I started tracking stock market, a lot of stocks, Reliance, HDFC. Why is the stock moving? How is the earning impacting the stock market? How is macroeconomics impacting stock? So that is the reason I got particularly excited about the investment domain in the finance sector. And hence, while doing MBA, my core decision was to get into a different profile. Investment banking, private equity have were the terms which excited everybody. So for me, the major decision for getting into finance and specifically into investment domain was my interest in stocks and investments. So yeah.
Okay, great. So we also have a lot of budding aspirants who are willing to join finance from IIM Kozhikode. And as the SIP season begins, people a lot of there's a lot of apprehension around the batch regarding the CV preparation. So from your perspective, how important is the CV preparation from in terms of getting placements, in terms of getting good calls? Because a lot of people do not know and they think that it's a very random process. So they're not very sure how much your CV would help. And secondly, as a matter of fact, how important is it to have a good POR and participating in case comms, which from a perspective of CV as well as from a learning perspective?
Right. So, see, getting placed in any company, it's a function of two things, right? One is that you get to the interview, and the second part is cracking that interview. So your CV is a actually really important document that helps you actually get a place, and that to have that conversation where you actually get to explain how interested you are, etc. So when it comes to CV prep, I think for all finance related roles, it's very important to have certain points all across a CV that indicates interest in finance. Like it might happen that a person is not from a financial background, let's say an engineer or someone from arts background or something like that. So in that case, it becomes very important to demonstrate that you actually have an active interest in this particular field. One way of doing that is basically, yes, case forms and all would become really important. PORs, especially financial yours, being a part of it helps. But I think, since there are limited, vacancies for that, one way to enhance your CV is definitely case competitions. Other things are that, there are a lot of courses available online that helps indicate that you are interested in learning about this particular space. Now, those courses are not always very, it might not be extremely value additive, but it gives a sense to the recruiter that yes, you are interested in this particular field. So I think your CV has to be curated that way. And generally, it happens that when your CVs go to a company, so it's flipped through really quickly. So by the very outset of it, it should seem to that person that yes, you are interested in finance. So I think those are some of the ways in which you can enhance your CV. So yeah, that was Aditya, if you want to add.
Yeah. So very, very valuable insights, Akshay. As he rightly pointed, even I feel that like the placements at IIM, they are kind of a function of two things. So like he rightly pointed, what are the roles which are available in the market, and second being like what your placecom team can offer you from that pool. So and if you factor in these two aspects, there is always a demand usually happens. And I also think that there is a recency bias as well in the SIPs, because see, everyone has landed up at IMK. So now what usually matters is what how did you arrive? Like how did you where did you work, and what has been your educational background? And that's where I think the CV plays a very key role. And rightly pointed, I would like circle back to the strapline in a minute. All the buckets which there are in the CV, what I suggest juniors is to follow a thumb rule, is to keep it as an iterative process, wherein you create a draft of your pointers, get it vetted through your seniors or maybe a third party, any person, and then keep on refining those points until it's the best version. Obviously, to factor in the finance aspect, there are two things. If you are planning it from a very long time and probably gathering certifications like CFA and everything, so those points, they are like a kind of an ideal scenario for a candidate, wherein it helps to make your CV stand out. And if like in my case, wherein you have landed and you now are searching for opportunities, like what can I do, then you can probably have some online coursework from Harvard, Stanford, showing your intent and intent in learning these subjects and working for it. And yes, like coming to the strap line, as he mentioned, they have a 20-25 CVs in hand. They have to go through it in 10-15 minutes kind of a thing. So your 4-5 highlight points would be, there should be a hook in it, which should excite them to have a look into it. Yeah, off to you.
So yeah, so according to me, I think there are like these 4 or 5 important parameters. One, if you have some academic achievement, CA, CFA, it certainly is an add-on when applying for a finance role. Second is experience. If you have past experience, evaluation, PE, IB, any kind of experience, it just adds on to your CV. So in case, some of the candidates might not have these two things in their bag. So in that case, I think what Aditya rightly pointed out, there has to be some interest which has to be shown. This could be done by either joining some committee, say FI, you join FI, or you do some courses on an academy. At least there's some sort of interest. And of course, the fourth thing is it's a matter of luck as well. In spite of the fact you might have all the three things in your bag, you might not get the shortlist, or even the reverse case scenario. If you might not have anything in the bag, you might still get good kind of shortlist. So I think it's a function of all, but there has to be certain spark in your CV to excite the interviewer that, okay, this CV could do something better and deserves an opportunity at least. So yeah, I think this is something which is very important. Coming to say case comps, I feel case comps are not as important to get into, and there are not a lot of case competitions which happen particularly for finance field. So I think case comps is not that great, but having some sort of experience in terms. So for me, while appearing for final placements, I always wanted to get into this investment domain, but I didn't had any kind of experience, though I had academically good background. So I did an internship, an unpaid internship at a VC firm, so that at least the interviewer could get something out of my CV, and he gives me a short list. So that is how you could say try your best to to make your CV better and impress the interviewer.
Right. So these are some great insights. And so you also covered, like, for people who don't have a finance background, what all they can include apart from people who already have, like you mentioned, Pratik, that you had done a VC internship and, you all had some prior experience. So that was something which was very insightful. Next, we would just want to know that how was your journey of interviews? Like, I'm sure when you were going through the SIP process, there were a lot of things going on in all of your minds as well, and it must have been very intense at that point of time. So firstly, how were your journey of interviews? How did you prepare? And what were the things that you did which you feel that it helped you to stand apart from others? And also, finally, what materials did you use for preparation? So you can just let us go through all these things as well.
Yeah. So I think you rightly mentioned that there are a lot of things that goes on in a candidate's mind. When SIPs are around, there's a lot of uncertainty, and there is always a question that you should prepare for everything. But I think what my experience has been, and what I feel is that it is very important to have a focused approach to things, and it's really really important that for whatever, see, once the shortlist process begins, things move really fast. So there are certain things which are basically hygiene checks, which I think it's very important for every candidate to keep in mind, especially for finance roles. One is definitely what's going on, in a macroeconomic scenario, like what's happening with interest rates, inflation, etc. It is absolutely, absolutely important that you have, a pitch ready in terms of, let's say, uh, they might ask you to talk about a particular company. So it's advisable that you have a working, like, basically you're able to speak on a particular industry. So you should probably, it would be a good thing to prepare a kind of report for your own reference on a particular industry on which maybe you can speak for some time. So these are some of the hygiene factors that you have to maintain going into an interview. But when it comes to certain specific roles, there are certain, level of preparation would vary a lot. Let's say if you're appearing for an IB role, right? Then in those cases, certain aspects like valuations, etc., all of those things become really important. So now the question is, how do you prepare for these things, right? There's no set material that you can refer to. It's not like an exam. They can ask you anything under the sun. So I think one a very good source of information that I found was, like, we have financial years at IIM Kozhikode. Similarly, there are finance groups, interest groups in other colleges as well that publish materials quite frequently, aimed at SIP preparation or interview preparation. So I think apart from using your regular sources like using internet for prepping for the interview, I think it's really helpful that you go through these particular materials to help you prepare for that particular interview. And I think one last point that's really important is that you should be very proactive in reaching out to your seniors who are working in that particular field, so that you have a sense of what to expect. So you are not caught unfazed when you are in an interview. So I think, yeah, these things are, if you tick these boxes, I think you should be in a good shape to go for the rounds.
Yeah. So,
Aditya, if
yeah.
you want to add.
So Akshay has covered it very comprehensively. So my preparation for SIP, it was more on a generic side. Cause like I wasn't sure, first of all, if I would land up in a finance job for an SIP. But as he rightly pointed, basically you can put the preparation into three buckets again. Like the first being like knowing thoroughly your CV pointers, because what usually happens is you go to a finance interview. You have written, I have done a course on M&A from Harvard University, and then the interviewer, he pops a question at you that you know what, tell me last 2-3 transactions which happened recently, and there you are caught red-handed in that sense that you are not well prepared for that scenario. So prepare all the pointers, CV pointers thoroughly. And second bucket would be, like you rightly pointed, the domain knowledge for different roles. So for consulting, you can do guesstimate case studies. For finance, like I personally found the FI material to be very useful, and that was a kind of an initial point to start with. Wherein then later I knew that there was a site which they are referring to, Investopedia and everything. Then I started exploring it myself, and then the journey started. So at least as an initiation point, you can leverage this material from various interest group and committees. And a third and the most important bucket, which I personally feel is the HR question set, because however your interview goes and how many rounds you crack, at the end it always boils down to that HR round, and one round can literally get you out of the process. So, like prepare well for the HR round as well. I would say you can club the first and the last bucket together, wherein while preparing for your CV pointers, you can also prepare for the HR questions related to it. So that's what was my approach as a generic one for the SIP. Off to you, Pratik.
Yeah, so just to add on to Akshay's and Aditya's point, I think on the HR side, usually the interview usually starts with, something about yourself or a briefing. So that is the point where I think you should target and uh, give direction to your interview, that this is where I want to focus to. So when people used to ask me in my interview, I used to give a brief about my background. And then at the end, I used to tell them that I have a lot of interest in stock market, and I used to track, say, cement sector and paint sector, so that I've just given them a hint that, okay, I want this 15 minutes, the next 10-15 minutes to go into this specific direction. And I'm well prepared for it, because the interviewer will have, like, say, 15 to 20 minutes amount of time, which he has taken for your interview. So it's important that you justify this time by giving it to the direction where you wanted to take it. So I think that is how you give them some hint that this is where I want to lead the direction to. And I think for me, when I appeared for JP Morgan, I think this is how I could do it. They asked me about your interests, and I could answer about stock markets. And then they asked me to analyze some stocks. Which stocks do you trade? And that is where I wanted my interview. This similar thing I used in my finals as well. So I think giving a direction or having a proper narrative to your HR answer definitely helps.
Great, great. So those were some great insights. So I think a lot of the juniors who are preparing for their SIPs would get a lot of help from this. So now coming on to the next question. So there are diverse set of people who've come to IIM Corico. So the general vibe around finance roles are that it's a very technical role, right? So some do not have the required degree. If you have the required degree, people do not have work experience, they are freshers. If they have work experience, you do not have the relevant work experience. If that is there, then the academic qualification is not there. If that is there, then people lack the confidence or the knowledge to speak in the finance domain, right? So everybody is struggling somehow. But when you're around people, you always feel ki yaar, there's this someone, he's a chartered accountant, so probably he'll be pushed over me because he's got the required qualification. So how did you all tackle those butterflies in your stomach? So when you had a call, there were people who were equally good who had a call, right? So all of you all must have felt ki yaar, there's an equal chance that he might get in, I might not get in. He's been preparing for so much. He's got such and such backing, and you tend to underplay yourself. So how did you manage to get over that and crack this role, crack your respective roles?
Yeah, I think, see, I would say that students who are, currently sitting for their placements, this uncertainty will always be there, right? I mean, everything gets amplified, emotions are running high. So, see, all I would say is that when companies are actually shortlisting CVs, surely someone who has a CA degree or who has a CFA degree does have an upper edge. But like the only thing that I want to say out there to my fellow students is that companies don't just look at these factors when they are shortlisting. At least for me, like I have done a lot of CV shortlisting for Nomura itself, right? So over there, personally, the things that I look at would be the main point that should come out in your CV is the intent. Now, there are a lot of instances where people from, let's say, uh, economics background or engineering background are hired in core finance roles such as investment banking also. So in these cases, though there are many other candidates who have CAs, who are CAs, who have CFA degrees, but it becomes very important to see that the story that your CV is portraying, does that indicate your inclination towards finance? I think that is the only thing that matters. Uh, Other than that, the the thoughts about how you would do it or how other person is placed, I think those are very natural feelings to have. But I would say don't worry about it. Focus on your CV. The Try to bring out the intent of finance through your CV so that it is noticed by the person who's shortlisting it. And yeah, I think other than that, I think you'd be good to go. I think that would be my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, so to add on to Akshay, obviously this is kind of a fearful situation for someone who's not from a finance background, and I actually see myself back 2, 3 years down the line in a similar kind of a situation wherein I know like I'm competing with CAs, CFAs, and these guys having a very strong background in finance can have a very good grasp over this subject. And obviously, if you look, then the learning curve also differs. So yeah, these concerns are actually real. But let me tell you one thing which I've experienced across these 2 years. So initially, what my perception of finance was, it was heavily dominated by accounting. But later, like near the when I came close to the second year, I realized that it's like actually a very small part of it is accounting. Obviously, the basics is related to accounting, but most of it is number crunching and proper pure logic which you can apply. And to give a cooler to juniors, what I would say is whatever you learn in an like at IMK is more on a bookish end rather than what you are actually working in the industry. For example, let's say if you're working in IB, wherein you're actually profiling a company, you're studying the macroeconomics factor, and you're looking at in a very broader perspective. Even the valuation per se, you're studying it on campus, like the DCF valuation is very bookish compared to what we do in IB is usually a comparable kind of evaluation, com sets running, and yeah, some obviously it feels daunting, but I would say that you'll get a hang of it, and yeah, you should definitely go for it. So that's my 2 cents. Off to you, Pratik.
Yeah, I think this concern is a valid concern. I think even I had it. I think most of us had it when we were giving interviews. I remember when I think Piramal Alternative was the only buy side investment job which was there, and it had given very good shortlist. I think, as what I remember, all CAs, CFAs, people who had multiple degrees. So I think this issue will always be there. I think this is a good problem to have to compete with good people who have good mindset. So I think how I approach it, because at my point of time, I remember there were a lot of people who had multiple degrees as well. It's not just CA and only CFA. There are people who have done CFA, FRM, and people who have good academic score, PORs as well. So which in my case was not there. So I was only a CA, and I didn't have CFA L1 and L2 anything. So for me, I think when I was giving interviews, for me it was only to give my best efforts, and that is what I think getting to P. So I think modeling, basic understanding of basic stuff, you cannot get wrong on those basic stuff, whatever opportunity you have. So having a basic sense of, say, modeling, valuation, macros is important. So that whatever opportunity you get, you are capitalizing it, and there'll always be competition, but effort is what you can give it. So I think this is the reason why I think people get into it. So you cannot just relax because you have multiple degrees. So you need to perform in the interview with your efforts, and it has to be seen through your interview. So I think that is important.
Yeah, so these were some great points. I'm sure the juniors would pick on these points and add these points in their SIP preparation as well. So while we are continuing this discussion on that aspect, like for people who do not have a core finance background, so Aditya, you were an engineer and you switched to finance in your finals. So I'm sure during your SIP and even after that, you must have seen people around you who were not from finance backgrounds, but who ended up in finance. Probably they had developed that love for finance. So my question is that what difficulties did they face after they joined their say internships or even their final jobs? Because not everyone was as equipped as people who had background in finance. So they had to develop that over the years and then come at the same level or compete with people who already had that background. So what are some difficulties that they faced when they joined? And if probably juniors who want to go into finance and do not have a background, they can just get an insight on that and maybe work on those skills as well.
Yeah, sure. So real. And like even I remember when I joined Bofa, there like the cohort it had like CA CFA people, and obviously their learning curve is somewhat faster than you. But then like it's your responsibility to up your game. And what I feel is like eventually you'll get a hang of it, because ultimately the work products, for example, in IB which you're working on, are the basically the pitch book slides which the bankers go and pitch to the for a different deal. And obviously there is some part of finance to it, but most of it uh, which is your daily PPT and Microsoft Excel skills. And obviously, like I'll give you an example of a situation which I myself faced. For example, like whenever we do, for example, the comps set for the comparable valuation, there are few cases wherein we have to do EBITDA adjustments for different companies, and these guys were really quick and smart in adjusting EBITDA, and I used to still struggle in initial days on adjusting it. And I remember even the IFRS 16 lease adjustment kind of a situation wherein if you ask a CA for him, he'll tell you on spot what are the IFRS 16 things and how it's getting adjusted. But obviously, for other people who are from different backgrounds, it is somewhat a challenge in a certain aspect, but you can always overcome it. You just have to show the intent and the drive for learning.
Great, great. So, as you all mentioned, you all have been working in this industry for the good part of the last 2 years, and you all are also involved in picking CVs. So, to the outside world, when they hear an IIM, the typical thought process is the companies must be dying to take the candidates. And when they join in, when they get to know about the actual process of the placements, of the interviews that they have to go through after the initial shortlist presentation round, then there's a GD round, 3 rounds of an interview, all in the same day. So they get kind of a cultural shock. So when you're looking for candidates, when you all come to these IMs, so what are the types of non-negotiable skills, competence in terms of soft skills, hard skills that you are looking for in these candidates? And like, what are the things that you focus on mostly and think, okay, fine, this is something I can work with him on, or this is something that is a non-negotiable despite him having probably good knowledge or attitude?
I think the question that was presented right now, I think in some form or the other, like throughout this series of discussion, I think it has already been answered to a certain extent. But I think at the risk of sounding repetitive, I think the only thing that would be absolutely non-negotiable is that candidates' drive to be in that particular industry and that candidates' willingness to be a part of that company. So it's really important that in your course of conversation you highlight it, maybe some in certain cases subtly, in certain cases not so subtly, that this is something that you're interested in, and this is what your end game is. So if I'm taking an interview and I don't get that feeling that you want it badly enough, then no matter how good your competency might be, I might pass you over for some other candidate. So in my experience, I think this has been one of the things that it's something which not just me, but a lot of people in my industry would definitely look at. Because now we get a little specific on investment banking. So investment banking is not really your typical 9 to 5, right? It requires a lot of grit and it requires a lot of hard work. So the intent of that person to be a part of that industry and to be willing to, dedicate themselves to that particular role, to that particular company, I think that becomes very important. And I think that would be non-negotiable. So this was just an example, but it's very important to highlight how, how much that role means to you and how much enthusiastic you are to be a part of it. Aditya, if you want to add.
Yeah. So I'll add a couple of points to what Akshay said. Like similar to what he said, for the IB industry, what I feel is on a knowledge and competency aspect, you can do hand holding on small stuff, but you can't land up there asking people very basic FA kind of a first year question in IB. Obviously, there would be a hand holding aspect for people which are not from the same background. But yeah, the domain basics are non-negotiables. Coming to the soft skills, now what I feel is that in the IB industry, it depends. Like if you are at the front end, what I feel is your smooth communication matters a lot, and your leadership and ownership skills also matters a lot. And there I would actually like to point out your street smartness actually matters the most, because you're in such a group wherein like people pop such a question at you and you have to dodge it, you have to kind of find a route to answer it. So I would say that there are three things: focus on your communication, then the ownership and the leadership aspect, and the street smartness for the front end kind of thing. If you are in the mid to back office kind of a thing, obviously the communication part is not that crucial. Obviously, later at a later point of time, it will play a role. But then your ownership aspect is very much into play, because you are the one who is getting your hands dirty and providing material to the front office banker, and there is a lot of a back and forth over that process. So you have to take the ownership of your product. It's getting presented at a very good stage. Like maybe what material you are presenting, giving could be presented to a CFO, CEO level. But from your end, you have to take ownership of your mistakes. You have to take ownership on end-to-end completing the models, whatever the banker asks and everything. So yeah, those skills I think are non-negotiable for the IB industry also.
Yeah, I think perfectly summarized by Akshay and Aditya. So I think while shortlisting CV, this is what we look at. Either there has to be some experience, some academic interest, there's something which sparks. So it's important to have the right spike points. So during the interview, so people should have, I think, 3-4 backup spike points on what would excite the interviewer while shortlisting my CV. So I think it is important based on the profile which is coming. Even in the even in the domain of finance and investment, there could be multiple spike points which you can use for multiple companies, because the interviewer will hardly get say a minute, while we review CV, we hardly take 30 seconds. So either we do it through Excel. In an Excel, we'll get the summary of what you have done, or if we have more time, we'll go through the CV in detail. And when we go into CVs, we first look at the spike point. If spike points are not exciting, I'll just pass on the CV and see the next candidate, because we might not have this much of time to go through each and every CV. So I think it's important to spark that interest amongst the interviewer, so that he can at least go through your entire CV and then decides whether or not he wants to give you a shortlist.
Right. So while we've been having this discussion, we've focused mostly on investment banking, and in our discussion with, like, in our interaction with our juniors also. So whenever we ask them that what in finance. So almost all of them answer investment banking, and they're not really sure of why investment banking or something on those lines as well. So it would help a lot if, we could just discuss the roles that are offered under finance, because this is the first time most of them are sitting for their any sort of placements, or going through such a professional route. So it would help them if they know what kind of roles are there and what specific things do recruiters look for in that particular role. For example, for IB, some metric would be different as compared to a PEVC role or for a CopFin role. So if you could just go through all the roles that are offered in finance, that would be great.
Yeah, I think with regards to the kind of roles that are offered, I think that would vary a lot across the years, right? But some of the roles that I had interviewed for, and I think I would be better placed to talk about that. So one of them is basically equity research, that the kind of role that comes in. So I think in that, as I had mentioned earlier, it's very important to have some basic research done on your part. I think these are some of the things that do pop up in an interview. Apart from that, I think in case of an IB, or I would say even in case of buy side roles, one very important aspect that they judge is your ability to handle pressure. So what happens is that in an interview, the end goal is not always to judge your financial acumen or how well you know a particular thing. Like a lot of there's a lot of cross questioning. So it's really important that you maintain your calm and composure throughout. So I think that becomes extremely important for IB and in case of buy side rules. Well, in case of, I would say, this thing, risk profiles, I think again, at least for me, the experience was not so much focused on technicals, but more focused on general industry knowledge and things of that kind. So my overall experience after giving interviews is that yes, technical aspects of it do become important. In certain cases like IB and buy side, technicals do play a very important role, and you need to have your basics absolutely clear. But irrespective, in all kinds of interview, you should be ready that it might be a stress interview. And over there, it becomes again, Aditya had spoken about the importance of communication, right? So it becomes very important to communicate. If there is certain aspects that you don't know about, you should be very clear about it, that this is something that I do not know, I will work on it. But it's at all times, it's very important that you maintain your calm and composure, because a lot of these interviews, this is the kind of skill that they want to test. So I think Aditya and Pratik would be better or be able to elaborate, I think, on it, on different kind of roles. So over to you, Aditya.
Yeah. So, like Akshay rightly pointed, even my understanding of the industry is still evolving. And what I feel is like I targeted few roles, the top of which was the PEVC role. And unfortunately, now what I've realized is like it's a role which requires a certain experience in the industry. So either you should have a domain expertise of a particular industry, or within finance itself, you should have an experience and maybe a experience on deal work or handling few transactions. That helps in the PVC kind of a scenario. So IB we have already covered. Apart from that, I think corporate finance roles are also a good option for people to join, wherein like mostly they focus on the capital restructuring and those kind of a thing. And even the capital markets, I would say, even Bofa offers that kind of a role wherein they have equity capital markets or debt capital markets, wherein ECM mostly they focus on tracking certain equities and doing a thorough research on it. And in the DCM, mostly they study the governance aspect and so detailed of the debt structures and everything for the organization. So yeah, it's a kind of a big landscape, I would say. And like even I am still exploring it. But yeah, like these were the roles which fascinated me during my final interviews, and then obviously this IB was the path ahead. Off to you, Pratik.
Yeah, so I think perfectly summarized by Aditya and Akshay. I think majorly JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs are the bulk hirer for say summer internship and finals as well. So they offer profiles in wholesale credit risk, retail risk, and some investment banking profiles. I think, and Goldman also comes for equity research profile. So apart from that, I think Nomura comes and some IB roles as well. And PE, I think multiple sometimes comes, and Piramal Alternatives is the one which comes to hire for PE roles. So in Piramal Alternatives, we usually hire for two roles here. And one is the performing credit fund, and one is fund of funds. So where in both of them, one is more of a VC, and second is where we evaluate say a higher growth stage company over 100 crore revenue and say 20-25 crore EBITDA. So post which we start evaluating those kind of companies. This is again more like a funding those companies in their growth stage so that you attain a good amount of returns from them. So I think these are the major roles which comes to our institutes, and very few PE roles are there. So I think these are the ones which should be targeted by the students.
Got it, got it. So these were some amazing insights. So one last question before we close this amazing session. So we've been stating the importance of SIPs and saying how important that is for the career trajectory of everyone who joins an IIM. So on the other hand, so for very few people, I feel are able to get to the target company or the dream companies during their SIP or even post their finals. So, what would be, since you all have all worked, finally joined a company which was different from your SIP companies. So, a piece of advice for all those who could not probably convert their dream companies or target companies as to how they should, pick up themselves and keep up their confidence.
So one aspect that was highlighted throughout the course of this discussion was that getting shortlisted and getting converted during your SIPs, luck also plays an important factor, right? So though it might happen that you don't convert your dream company, let's say in summers, but I think the beauty of this entire process is that you get another chance to appear for your dream company, dream roles, like 1 year down the line. So I think an important thing to keep in mind is that if like you've not been able to convert, let's say, into a particular industry that you wanted to go, it is really important that you reach out to people, you reach out to your alums or maybe other people who are in this particular industry and try to understand what is it that goes into recruiting, for these particular positions. And I think it would really help if you utilize that 1 year to try to make your CV more appealing for that particular more geared towards that particular kind of role. And honestly, I would say that college placements can be very overrated. So don't beat yourself up that this is not the end of the world, right? So as you it might happen that maybe a particular subset of industry, let's say in finance you wanted to be in IB and that didn't work out and you had to go for a research role. So all I'm trying to say is that the path to IB does not close there. Even if things have not worked out that way, you can still uh, be in that particular role and try to look for a switch later on. Or even if this I'm talking about in case if it doesn't work out during finals also. But when it comes to your summer placements, I think you have a one good year with you in order to prep yourself and try to convert those particular kind of roles. But I would say don't beat yourself too much. Don't beat up yourself too much about it. Just be focused, be prepared, and I think things will work out. Don't worry.
Yeah. So, like similarly, what Akshay said, don't get bogged down by the conversion or non-conversion of PPO. And I would say, like, look at it from that aspect that it could be a kind of a blessing in disguise, wherein you maybe set of roles in your mind, and if you don't convert a PPO in, let's say, one thing, you get an opportunity to explore other thing or work in other part of the industry. So yeah, like the simple key is to prepare the entire year again, and the basics remains the same. You will eventually land a good job, so don't get stressed out. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think summer internship, of course, includes a lot of factor of luck. So it might not happen that you get all the good shortlists. But I think during finals, it is important. I think a lot of things are there to cover up. You can analyze what went wrong, what was right with the people who got into those domains where you wanted to get into. So I think summers, I think luck plays an important role, but finals, you have a lot of things in your hand. You have some time, you have things to analyze. So it's important you work on small things. So you have the right mentor. I think for me, what was important was there were people to guide me. I connected with the right people who could help me with, say, CV mentorship and getting the right profiles. See, if I wanted to get into PE, what has to be prepared to get into a PE. So it is important to have a good mentor. And some of the times, if you don't have a mentor, you reach out to people on LinkedIn who are already working in the same industry. So if you want to go into Ambit, you want to go into Nomura, you want to go to Piramal, you reach out to people on what exactly is the profile and what is something which I need to do in order to reach at the place where you are already working. So I think that small things is something which you can do till the time of final placements.
Thank you everyone for this really enriching session. I'm sure this was like a mini MBA for the students in itself, and they'll have a lot of takeaways from this before their, the dreaded SIP sessions begin. So thank you all. It was an honor hosting all of you all.
Thank you so much.